Okay, so we're going to start with the next panel, which is really interesting because they're all buyers. So pay close attention to what they have to say. And the talk is called, look what I have to do this, I really do. Don't make fun, it's going to happen to you, I'm telling you. Brand success and longevity. And it's going to be moderated by Donata Minelli. And as speakers, we're going to have April Henning, Ricky DeSol, and Divya, I don't want to say incorrectly, Martha. Thank you. Thank you. Who was that? Much appreciated. Welcome, girls. Sorry, I don't have my reading glasses and I'm suffering. Have fun. You look beautiful. They look amazing. You're very welcome.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. I have been at Laughs since the very first one, and I get really impressed year over year over the content that they're sharing, but also the audience that arrives. I am so excited to be on stage with these three ladies who are women who I actually work with, like on a day-to-day, week-to-week, which I've never had that experience before of having partners who I've known, many for a long time. And I'm excited about the conversation that we had. In preparation, we had a pretty robust dialogue because there's so much to talk about when it comes to this subject. And I'm going to start the panel in a way that's not necessarily hitting on the exact subject line, but I think when we talk about brand identity, we're often talking about the designer's brands, and we don't always talk about the brand identity of a retailer. And I think when you're a new business or an emerging brand, knowing your brand's positioning, your price points, the adjacent businesses that you sit with are an important part, but also knowing the brand identity of the stores that you're actually pitching your product to is something that gets overlooked a lot. So I'm going to take a minute and have each of them just give a brief introduction to the very well-known businesses that they are all leading and a part of. So I'll start with you, Divya, and we could go from there.
Hi, everyone. I'm Divya. I am the fashion director at Revolve Group. We are a online retailer, two websites, revolve.com and forward.com. Our business is really focused on the Gen Z and millennial consumer across both an aspirational as well as a luxury price point.
Hi, everyone. My name is April Hennig. I'm the Chief Merchandising Officer of the website Moda Operandi. Moda is a pure-play e-commerce website started in 2011 by Lauren Santo Domingo, former Vogue editor, who had launched the website with what we call a trunk show model. And so for the first 6 years of business, we were just running what we called trunk shows, and that was to fill a void in the market to bring runway collections immediately after they walked designers' shows to the consumer so that she could shop them immediately versus having to wait 6 months and find the product she wanted. The website's now evolved, and trunk show's a smaller piece of our business, and the other portion is just what we call our boutique business, day in and day out, a website wholesale. We focus on the top of the pyramid luxury customer. We've got a little over 600 brands across all categories, including home and newly launched beauty. And customers really come to us for something really special. She's looking for luxury. We sell a lot in high designer price points, but also in emerging and discovery brands.
Hi, everyone. Is that on?
A little closer.
I'm Ricky DeSoy. I'm the women's fashion director at Nordstrom. We were founded in 1901, and we have 350 stores across the country, across Nordstrom, Nordstrom Rack, and Nordstrom Local. We are a service-based company, really laser-focused on our customer, and we are here to make you feel good and look your best. And we like to say that we offer a variety of brands from Nike to Chanel, or Vans to Valentino.
Great. Well, thank you for that. And thinking about the life cycle of a lot of your businesses, we wanted to get started with what it means with getting into the retailer. Divya, as fashion director, you're bombarded, everyone is bombarded every day with new brands, new designers, new products that are trying to get your attention. With all of that media that's coming to you, along with a very robust matrix of brands that you already have, what sets a brand apart for you today when you're looking for new businesses? Because every retailer needs new businesses. It's important that there's a sense of discovery. What is it that you're looking for today?
Yeah, I think for any retailer, I think we'll all agree it's consumer first, right? So we kick off our season really thinking about what does our consumer want from us? And that is diving into what worked from a product perspective, a category perspective, a trend perspective. You know, at Revolve, we're even looking at how our creative performed, what resonated with the consumer. And then we really go into the season, our buyers, with a robust trend presentation where they've almost got like a checklist of, you know, if a brand did really well, then they're focusing on how they can grow that brand and what the opportunities are. If there's a trend we're really going after, then they're specifically scouring the market saying we're looking for more of this, or we're looking for this fabrication or key item. And then conversely, there's things that we're kind of not into anymore, whether that's the trend has moved on, or, you know, when it comes to newness, if we already have a lot of something, even if it's still trending, it's always going to be our preference to grow that with the businesses that we have versus onboard a ton of new brands doing something that we already have. So I feel like for us, it's really identifying the areas of opportunity that our consumer cares about, and then really going into market saying, here's what we're looking for, and kind of weeding through the brands that are offering that. So believe it or not, there is like a very concise list, and there always is just kind of those emerging brands, right? And that's where I think the fashion office really comes in, where something will be on our radar, or there'll be a trend or an emerging designer that we're kind of like, ooh, there's something here, and we'll take a bet and we'll take a risk on that. And I think that's kind of like part of the magic of every retailer, is where we kind of choose to make those bets and take a risk.
I'll probably add in, for Moda, I would say one difference for our site is we lean so heavily into storytelling and editorial. So one component that's really important to us is what is the narrative, and obviously the unique product positioning is super important because our site is very curated and we try not to have really very much overlap at all. So every designer has to have that strong value proposition. But the editorial and the content component is really important for us. So we sometimes will see a brand, we might love their product, but if they didn't have the images and the storytelling down, we would probably wait and continue to watch it until we felt like we had the right editorial we could tell the story against.
So I want to touch on that point that you just said. So the part two to that question, I've worked on the brand side for 27 years. I've pitched a lot of products to retailers over the years. And you get that first appointment and you're so excited, and then you hear well, I'll keep watching you, or let's stay in touch. What are other points? I mean, the storytelling is a big one. What are other things that you're looking for? Because I think if you're genuinely saying, let's stay in touch, and I'm watching you, what are you hoping to see the next time around? And I'm sure it's different for every brand, but there are some real generic points of what you're looking for the next time around.
I can take that one. You know, for us, I think so much is also brand awareness. You can have an amazing brand, but having some visibility in the marketplace, having tested, with Nordstrom being such a large-scale retailer, for us, getting a little bit of your feet wet, maybe with local retails, smaller specialty stores, to understand how working with wholesalers works, because it's a complicated system. It's not plug and play. We have very intense standards to which we hold brands to, and so sometimes that let's stay in touch is let's see where your brand is developing, and also get a little traction. So when our customer is coming, she's looking, we have so many brands on site that she is able to look to find your brand. And I think for us too, it's also when you see a little spark of something, but wanting to see how that brand is developing. You might have one item that's great, but what does the next item look like? How are you pricing your collection? If you have one key piece, but your second piece is twice as much as the first, right? Like how are you going to build that out? And so so stay in touch is not a negative thing. Stay in touch is sort of saying, this is great, keep going, and let's stay in touch and we can give feedback so that you're ready, we're ready together, because there's nothing worse when you bring a brand on board and they're not ready. We want to do it when it feels right.
I think one piece of advice for brands would be when you get that comment of let's stay in touch, it's in your best interest to try to ask what specifically that retailer was maybe looking for that they didn't find in that collection, so that you're able to spend the next 6 months really working and addressing some of the feedback. And also just know that it's so common for retailers to want to, as Ricky said, watch collections for multiple seasons, see consistency in a brand. So it's totally normal and okay. Sometimes it's just all about timing. Could be about macroeconomics, budgets could be down overall. It could be not the right moment from a trend perspective, as Divya mentioned. So there's so many reasons. But I think just knowing specifically for your brand what that retailer had in the back of their mind when they said that.
So in the beginning of a relationship, a brand with a retailer, there's a lot of terms that are being negotiated, and exclusivity is a big one, which is very controversial. A lot of times a retailer may ask a new brand that a couple of stores are excited about to be exclusive to them only. Ricky, we had an interesting part of our conversation that stood out to me. What do you recommend as guidance to a brand out there who's excited to get picked up and is being asked to be exclusive to them, whether it's for a season or a longer period of time, and how to navigate that complicated dialogue?
This is not a one-size-fits-all answer, because for every brand it's different. I think where we see exclusives really work is when you're a big DTC brand like Skims or On Running, and you have an item. We tend to be the exclusive retail partner as those brands are looking to scale, and that is large, and those are brands that have a lot of brand equity, and now they're growing it through the Nordstrom network. I think when you're a small brand, it's risky, because ultimately you're saying no to other businesses. So I think you really have to look within yourself and understand what are the terms. A lot of times those exclusivity agreements can come with 1 season, 2 seasons, 3 years. So I think really taking a step and say, when does it make sense from a marketing standpoint? It's a hook. It's a great hook. Exclusive at Nordstrom. It sounds great. But at what point does it become challenging to your own business? And then just a layer on to that is, I think there's exclusivity across the US, but then there's also regional exclusivity. So I would always ask that question and say, I can give you exclusivity in a particular market because we don't want you to be around the corner, but maybe there's an opportunity to say, you can have this market exclusivity, but go with someone else in a place where we're not selling you. So I think just go back with questions and make sure you're negotiating.
I think the market's changed a lot too from the days when there were so many exclusive agreements that really held brands back and locked them in for many, many seasons. I think retailers are so much more open-minded now about knowing that a brand to build their business and what's in their best interest to grow their customer base and grow their awareness level is really, if done correctly, can be healthy for everyone. But slow and steady growth is never a bad strategy either. And everyone looks for different things. For Moda, we're a smaller website, and we don't have the scale of a Nordstrom. So for us, it's actually kind of opposite. We love finding brands at the very beginning of their life cycle. We don't expect to keep them exclusive forever, but we don't need the brand to have a huge Instagram following or have any awareness whatsoever. That's one thing that we actually can provide brands. So kind of look for different things, and that's what makes for a healthy landscape.
A lot of times there's really just one moment for a brand to launch. Like you have this one shot. April, you're leading a business with a very dynamic business platform with the trunk shows. It's broader than that now, but it was part of how it began. And a trunk show is at the earliest stages of a product's life cycle in front of a consumer. You also spent years very successfully on the brand side. If a brand has one shot to launch, what are some of the initiatives that you think are really successful that they should be negotiating with and talking with the retailer about? Because really the retailer marketing portion of a launch is one of the greatest assets of opening a new store.
Yeah. No, it's a great question. I have a super short answer for just the Moda behalf, because Trunk Show is a part of our business where it's truly a hub for us now to experiment with new designers. So in those instances where we pick up a brand for a trunk show, it could be a single brand trunk show, so a standalone, or it could be part of a curated show. We usually take the reins on what that marketing is going to look like and what the point of view is and how we're going to train the associates on it. So there isn't really, in those cases, because it is more of a testing field, there's not a lot of conversation on the other side of it. However, if I were just to speak as in more general terms, and of course my time on the brand side, Donato's right. You have one big chance to launch when you're going into a full-time relationship with someone. And so I think the 3 big points to think about would be the marketing, the training, and then your brand positioning with the retailer. From a marketing perspective, so I think it's just having that dialogue with the retailer. What are they going to do to talk about the brand? Shipping product and having it end up on the sales floor or on the website with no awareness or storytelling behind it doesn't guarantee any sort of success. So you need to have that conversation with your partner to say, what kind of exposure can I get? Am I going to be on, is there email placement, social media? Are you going to help cross-promote the launch together? Is there an activation you can do together to celebrate? Is there a press or a celebrity or influencer seating moment you can work on together? From the training perspective, that's also really important. The sellers are going to be the ambassadors of your brand, and so unlocking that component is going to help you get off to a very successful launch. And then lastly, I bring up the placement and your positioning, maybe less so with e-commerce, but I work a lot with, and Divya and I together through a nonprofit we're a part of, work with a lot of small emerging brands. They're so excited to get an order from a large store, and they forget to ask a lot of really important questions, like, what exact doors are you putting my product in? I know I'm getting an order from a large department store. I think it's in 5 stores. They don't necessarily even know the regional markets they're going into. And then beyond that, who are your brand adjacencies? What's the department they're putting you in? You have, again, one chance to really comb out, like flush through those conversations with your partner and make sure it feels really in line with how you envision your brand.
Yeah, and I think to April's point on that, like, I wouldn't get discouraged if there's not a big, massive launch around your brand, right? It really just depends on your brand, where you are as a business, other priorities that the retailer has. But I think the important thing is that there are always different ways you can market with a retailer beyond a big activation, a big homepage, an email, an event. To April's point on consumer, I think one of the most effective marketing strategies with a retailer is saying, can I get in front of your store associates? Can I lead a product knowledge session? Can I train your customer service people who are answering calls about the product? And I think a lot of people overlook that, but that honestly is one of the most effective things you can do to boost your sales with a retailer. And oftentimes, once you kind of get past that proof point of like, hey, I retailed, I had an amazing 80-90% sell-through, the big marketing might come the next season, right? And for a retailer, if they're not placing a massive order against your brand, it's also not, cost effective for them to do a big marketing event against only a certain amount of open to buy. So I would say, like, sometimes it's baby stepping it, and it's some of the less obvious marketing that can actually set you up for success in your future seasons with the retailer.
Good addition. Divya, I'd say that Revolve was definitely one of the earliest adopters, if not the earliest, when it comes to influencer marketing and its impact within luxury fashion. How important do you think it is for brands directly to work within that space? And is there anything exciting and new that Revolve is working towards when it comes to influencers?
I mean, I think everyone needs social media, right? But to me, it's part of your marketing funnel, and you have to think about where your customer is. So for Revolve specifically and Forward specifically, our customer is on social media. So that's where we have to be as well. So we spend a lot of time, not just marketing on social media, but doing really impactful and meaningful partnerships, brand launches. We launch lines exclusively with influencers where, they might be the creative director, but then we're doing all of the design and production behind that. And that's where our customer is. So for us, it's been a really effective strategy. I'd say something new that we're doing, and we're honestly figuring it out, is TikTok. So again, as we see that our customer is on TikTok, we've also had to pivot to say, okay, it's not just about Instagram for us anymore. We have to figure out a TikTok strategy. So Revolve is actually an early partner, a beta partner of TikTok Shops, and we're just starting to put together our strategy on what does she want to buy on TikTok? How do we talk to her? And it's so different than any other channel. It's super authentic. We can't do anything scripted there, and it's a very young consumer at a much sharper price point. So we're kind of learning and evolving as well as we kind of see social media evolve. But like I said, I think as a brand, it really depends on, is your consumer really on social media? And if she is, then you need to be there as well. And I think that when it comes to influencers, Revolve works with everyone from micro influencers to the big celebrities. So I think it's kind of figuring out as a brand where you fit into that. I think micro influencers, I've said this before on a laugh stage, are really, really like overlooked contributors to your brand. They have highly loyal and engaged followers, and they can often activate in very specific demographics. So you can start small and build from there based on what you learn.
Does anyone else want to add to the conversation of influencers? Because I think it is like a hot topic, and also one that brands really struggle with how to navigate.
I think it has to feel personal at the end of the day. I mean, there's so many brands out there, and I think you have to be, as a customer, have to really connect to the brand. And until you see it, I think that's why TikTok resonates, right? There's that, you see someone who you want to look like, and you are going to look like them by buying that dress, right? And so I think it's that visibility conversation. When I keep thinking about Nordstrom, right, like so much of our traffic comes from people seeing someone, and then they type into our site or onto the app the brand or the item. So I think, again, how we can pull from those ecosystems and then bring them on to go shopping. So it's a super important channel, and again, we really encourage our brands to be using those channels to link back to us and vice versa.
I think the VIP and celebrity stylists is another angle that also will drive a lot of business through social media. Not necessarily influencers, but working with an agency that can help you seed your product out there is, a little bit of a different strategy than just engaging in some paid influencer marketing. But we've seen, and it happens all the time for Moda, the amount of even new customers we'll get to our site, or just the amount of sheer units we can drive through in an item when someone big has worn something. And it's not necessarily an influencer. It could be someone notable.
Meghan Markle dress.
Yeah, the Meghan Markle, Sophia Richie. I mean, there's a lot of people that will really move units. And a lot of those were placed actually through their stylists, so it wasn't, there's no paid promotion there. The brand didn't pay for it at all. They worked directly with the stylist for the poll.
I mean, I'll actually add just something for smaller brands who think that the best way is to put money towards that. I think it's really important to find really organic relationships with an influencer or stylist or celebrity who feels an affinity for your brand and that you're not paying for it up front. And there are ones who are wonderful out there who will support emerging markets, because I think sometimes there's a lot of budget being allocated improperly to influencer marketing when you're a really young nation's business still. So I would say be cautious about putting money to have somebody, it's called pay for play. Be careful about paying to play when you're a young emerging brand, because it may not have the results that you're hoping for, and find someone with a brand affinity. Ricky, Nordstrom's is one of the oldest stores in America, which is remarkable. Also, one of the most successful when it comes to being an omni business, which means there's inventory online, in-store, multiple regional stores. It's a little bit more operational than a typical fashion director question. But I think there's so much affinity for Nordstrom when I travel the country and I meet with consumers and ask them where they like to shop. Nordstrom is really high up there because of this customer experience and customer loyalty. Why do you think it's important for a brand to know about this customer experience, and how does it benefit them?
We all live really busy lives, and I think what we strive to do at Nordstrom is not make it complicated for people to shop. So Buy online, pick up in store is huge for us if you go to a Nordstrom, so much so that we have created our own Nordstrom Locals, which are stores that are solely dedicated to service. There's alterations, there's pickups, there's returns, and we don't sell you anything in those stores, which I think just shows our commitment to really trying to make people's lives easier. And I think it's kind of where people go, right? The trends change. During the pandemic, everyone was shopping online. We saw that too. We saw that business just take off. And then we came out of the pandemic and people enjoyed the experience. Our job as retailers is to make things exciting and allow you to discover, but you have to be able to discover where you want to, whether that's on social media, on an app, or on desktop. So much because we've been around for so long, people have really grown up with Nordstrom. And it's interesting because depending on where you live, you have a different perception of Nordstrom, because some of our stores lean more in the designer space, and others, they're more local and they're servicing a different kind of community. So I think everyone has a different interpretation, but what's the service element is the through line wherever you go. And I think having that consistency has kept people super loyal to us. When you're a brand, I think ways to tap in, which you sort of mentioned, Divya, is the people in our stores, they are the most important people in our company. And they are the frontline workers that are talking with our customers every day. My favorite part of my job is going to the stores and talking to them. And frankly, when I buy things, which my husband thinks is a Ponzi scheme because he's like, you make money to put it back into this company. But I think that it's really about having that experience too. And when you sit with someone and you buy something and they start telling you your stories and what you can learn, and you as a brand can have that experience too. So I would urge you, if you do get picked up at a store like Nordstrom, spend time in the stores, really get to know the people that are selling your product and learn about the customers that they're speaking to and making sure that your story is coming through, that they have that product knowledge. And we offer all those opportunities. And then also that community element that we're talking about with social media, bringing your community into the store. So whether that's pop-ups or activations or just little community events that you can ask your stores about.
That's great. I want to continue the dialogue a little bit on product knowledge and digital stylists and a few of those components. I'll share a little bit about myself for a second. I still travel to stores around the U.S. and London 6 to 8 times a year and conduct product knowledge seminars for Ulla Johnson. There are not many executives at my level, at our levels, that are doing this. I too, Ricky, love being in the store. It's first for me to be able to immerse every ambassador, who's every seller out there, in our brands directly, I find to be incredibly rewarding. But it's like all of the conversations that they come to me with afterwards, like all the fitting room conversations and showing me pictures of, well, I sent the picture on the model, but I tried it on to send it to my customer, and that's actually how they really shop. Like, we're meeting the customer, all of us are meeting the customer wherever they are, however they want to shop. But I want to talk about digital stylists a little bit. So I do these product knowledge clinics for Ulla Johnson. I did one pretty recently for April's digital stylist team. So digital stylist, big buzzword. I mean, I'm getting lots of emails from digital stylists all day long trying to sell me things, but they're pretty powerful, and there's actually lots of technology that's being adopted towards digital stylists right now. But I did this with April's team recently. Like, what do you think, April, is the reward of that? Like, so what now? I went out and I did this. How are these digital stylists helping all of these brands out there?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like most people may not know this about some of the e-commerce sites, but at Moda, for example, we have an army behind the scenes that is really holding the hands of our best customers all the way through the transaction.
How many? Can you say how many?
We have 30. We have 35. They each have a few hundred clients. On average, their book size is around almost $3 million per seller. And they are located all over the world. Most of them are in the U.S., but we have a few in Europe and the Middle East. They have their own book of business that we have some of them came to Moda with the clients that they have, but many of them were funneled through the pipeline of business. So it was someone who really it's after a customer spends a certain amount annually, they get into what we call our Moda Private program. They're assigned a stylist. They have their own set of tools. What they're doing every single day is creating edits. They're sending out their own emails. They're doing curations. They're doing anything from a Zoom consultation inside someone's closet. They're working, they have the entire transaction history of the client, so they know everything in their wardrobe that they've bought from Moda, and they're building on that every season. And that's our most loyal customer base. It's almost half of our business comes from this segment, so it's really integral to what we do. Keeping those stylists educated and informed, and for a brand to be top of mind with that stylist is it can make or break the season. They are the ambassadors, and the more educated they are about the collection, the more passionate they are about the brand. If they've had a personal connection with the designer, whether that's in person, we host some of our clinics in person because we've got about 10 that are based in New York, or we do it digitally, or they come to New York during Fashion Week and we'll host cocktail parties at designers' showrooms and get them really engaged with the brands. But that's how you create a lifelong customer, is through these stylists who are selling your product day in and day out. So it's a really powerful tool. And outside of, digital stylists, it's a buzzword, but it's really, they operate the same way as a seller. They're just not in a sales floor. They're working from home, or they're doing memo pulls of product. Or we also have, outside of our 35 that are in-house with us, we have a network of 500 affiliate stylists. So those stylists, they're not employed by Moda, but they work on a commission structure. They are stylists to either high net worth individuals that have a private stylist, or it could be costume designers or celebrity stylists. And so that's a whole nother network of people to keep informed and trained. But that's how half our business happens, so it's pretty powerful. But I will say, from working on the brand side, so before I was at Moda, I spent 6 years as the president of Jonathan Simkhai. If I were to look back and say, what is one thing that paid off from the amount of time and energy and resources we invested into something, it was being on the road. And not just with our biggest partners, so not just the department stores, but every small specialty store. I was lucky because I had a designer who happened to love doing that. All he wanted to do was be in the fitting room with women. It gave him a high like nothing else, so that helps. He would drag me along with him, and like Donata said, I felt like there's not so many executives that have to go on this road show. But it paid off, and we really created, not only did Jonathan, the designer, learn so much from all of that, like the live feedback from customers is so valuable. The designer takes it back and is working on the next collection. All that feedback's incorporated. But again, we made lifelong customers out of that.
Did you want to add to that? I feel like you...
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think like as more and more customers get more and more comfortable shopping online across retailers, the number of people that just like swipe up and buy direct from TikTok, Instagram, like you don't even know the brand. I think what's really happening is this trend that April's alluding to, which is there's so much choice out there right now. And I think we used to live in a world where online felt curated, and there was really kind of like you could go to a website and say, oh, they really have the brands that I like. And now as online retailers have grown massively, everyone carries a lot more product and a lot more brands. And that has kind of ushered in this need for people who can stop the endless scroll fatigue, right? I think there's a customer who just is like, oh my God, I went on this website, I went to dresses, white, short sleeve, and there were still 800 of them. And I think that's really what's happening with these, online digital stylists, is they're kind of bringing back the curation to an online shopping experience. And I think that that's just going to continue to be more and more important as people continue to shop more and more online, is you're going to want to be in places where they can help you find what you want without just scrolling and having to do all the work yourself.
They're really like the unsung heroes of our businesses. Like they really are introducing the brands, powering our businesses. So it was important to talk about and let people know that they actually exist, behind the scenes. We're talking a lot about building businesses right now, but I would love to hear from each of you maybe one piece of advice on how to keep growing, especially these times I don't know what to call these times. I'm tired of hearing about what these times are, but there's a little bit of a pullback of consumer spending. Any advice for an emerging mid-sized brand on how to stay focused and stay on track during these times where maybe retailers are pulling back some budgets? What can they be doing? What should they be thinking about right now to stay healthy, really?
I mean, I think it's so important to have a unshakable brand POV. And I think no matter what the trend is, no matter if times are good, times are bad, like your brand POV has to stay your brand POV. And I think about every business from, I mean, I've worked at a few retailers from like Saks to Shop Up to Intermix and now Revolve. And when I think about the brands that have built long lasting businesses, one, there's no get-rich-quick scheme. Like, do not start a brand if you want to get rich quick. It's never going to happen. It's all about longevity. And I think the brands that I've watched over 20 years that kind of jump from trend to trend, they kind of have a season that's good, then they have a season that's bad, then they kind of go sideways. And the brands that actually create long-lasting brand equity, customer loyalty, they are their brand 20 years ago to today. And I always reference Ula, actually. It's one of my favorite examples of a brand that their identity is so clear. And does that mean that you don't adapt to trend? Not at all, but you adapt to trend through your lens. So if cutouts are a trend, will Ula do cutouts? Sure, but they're always gonna do it in a way that feels Ula. And I think that is what I always look for when I look at brands is, sure, is there a trend that they're doing? They are, but they're not going to look different every season. And I think that's where you build customer loyalty is the customer knows they can always go to you for something and you'll be on trend, but through your lens. And that's what the customer wants is that brand lens.
That's great. I agree with everything Divya said. I would say a piece of advice for right now, just because obviously it is a really tumultuous time and we have a contracting economy, and it's tough for brands at every single level right now. But I would say, even in challenging times, not all brands feel the pain of that in the same way. Some brands actually thrive in what's been a challenging or a more recession type of environment. I would say if I were a brand, I would focus, in a moment like this, I would focus less on top line sales, more on bottom line. And I would devote more of your resources to building, even what Divya was saying, building your brand, your image, your reputation, and your recognition. I think that is far more important than getting caught up in just chasing a top-line sales number that may not happen and may drive you to make some decisions that you might actually even regret when the economy rebounds and you've maybe opened up new partners that you actually didn't really see as part of your growth strategy, but you did it to offset declining orders from someone else. Slow and steady wins this longevity race, so keep those decisions really close to your heart, and it's okay to not hit the top line sales you were looking to achieve if you can protect your bottom line.
Both said what I was going to say. I think it's that stay focused, right? I think what you see in times like this is suddenly, coming to all of us and trying to be everything to everyone. And I think, really, if you're going to approach any one of us or any other retailer, know why. Why does your brand make sense for Nordstrom, Revolve, Moda? And be sharp about what sets you apart. I think where the trends ebb and flow, you start to see a lot of the same. So being able to answer why does this, it might be amazing, but if it already exists, then maybe there isn't the opportunity. So being sharp on what each retailer already stocks and knowing how you can be different in the market.
We ran out of time 3 or 4 minutes ago, and I didn't even get through so many fun dialogues we were going to have, but we wanted to open up for questions. So yeah, that's.
Hi, thank you so much. I represent a curation of female-led jewelry designers. And in the topic of longevity, there is, and we've seen cases, important, notorious cases, where the need for newness and to constantly bring that what is new, what are you showing me, has played against a lot of big names and also small names. So in the topic of longevity and in the category of jewelry, what would be your advice in terms what is a healthy number of newness, or not a number, a healthy concept of newness that you would expect to keep that brand on board and to continue growing the brand? Thank you.
You said you were jewelry specifically?
Yes, I'm actually very happy because I work with you all.
I mean, I think that, I think jewelry is a little bit different than apparel in terms of newness. And I think apparel suffers from this never ending newness need, especially with big retailers. I think with jewelry, it's a little bit the opposite. I think you really build kind of awareness by having a core product that doesn't change, and maybe the plating changes, or you add diamonds, or you add but I think that when I think of really iconic jewelry brands, they actually do the same thing over and over, and it's really just about making small tweaks to it. I think introducing newness is important, but knowing that that's always going to be a smaller percentage of your business. Maybe that's more of an editorial play. It's more just to have something to talk about, but I actually love jewelry for that reason. You're not constantly chasing that trend, and you're not chasing that need to just be new, and it's more about building recognition, and whether it's a shape, a metal, a style. I'm thinking of Susanna Vega, who I actually met at Laughs. She's known for something, and does she update it? Sure, but it's not different dramatically every season in the jewelry world.
I think that's a good answer.
Hi, thank you for all the valuable information. My question goes on the topic of emerging brands and where you find them. I have a luxury footwear brand, and there's many ways of going into market, whether is it a showroom, whether it's at trade shows, or by yourself reaching out. What is your advice? Where do you usually find the most emerging brands?
We find them everywhere. There's no one answer. I think, we're doing our own research, so that's us going on social and staying tuned what people are wearing and what we're seeing. Obviously it's a bandwidth thing, so trying to get as many showrooms as we can, emails. I mean, if you could see my inbox, it's a constant flow. But I think, again, if you keep trying, right, I think get any meaning you can and start getting your story out there. And I think, so there's no one right answer, but kind of staying persistent and trying to get as much attention as you can through any of those channels.
Yeah, I agree with Ricky. It is everywhere. A lot of it is us finding the brand, not necessarily the brand finding us, and that a lot of that is just through having a very fashion-obsessed team that's on social media all the time. But personal outreach, if you have a connection and you are getting in front of the right buyer, it's hard to even navigate that, to find the right email address of the right person who's overseeing your product category. So email introductions and showrooms. I mean, for Moda, we do a little bit less for trade shows. We'll do some of the swim shows, but we don't shop as many trade shows. It sort of also depends who you're trying to get in with. For Moda, we pick up very small brands. If a brand's at a trade show, it's getting a lot of eyeballs. So that's a great place for you to be if the goal is to pick up a lot of different accounts. If you want to go a little more niche at a store like Moda, we wouldn't find you at a trade show. But we do shop a lot of the higher end showrooms as well. And I think that's a great place for a brand if it aligns with, the brand adjacencies in the showroom align with where you want to be.
I have a part two, because I was asked this in a breakout session by a few people. April, you touched on it. Divya and Ricky, do you or your teams go to any trade shows today? Is that even a vehicle that is being used?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think social media has in some ways replaced trade shows for us. I think April's point is 100% exactly what I was going to say. It depends on who you're trying to reach. I think trade shows have become, probably for the type of retailers we work for, just too broad, too big. There's not enough curation. There's not enough gut checking that it's the right brand. So it ends up being too much work for us to kind of sift through a lot. I will say that we do the swim shows because they still feel really curated. And then also with social media, when we do find brands on social media, one of the first things we do is we make sure that they can ship, right? So we're kind of right away being like, do they have a website? can that website take orders, and can that website actually, ship goods outside the home country? Because that's another big challenge with social media is we've seen so many brands that look fabulous and have amazing editorial, and then we reach out to them and it's like they have no idea how to work with a retailer or run a wholesale business. So I think that's kind of one of the caveats of social media is that while we find a lot, there's often not a lot that is truly ready to work with a retailer of our size. And on the trade show side, I remember 10 years ago, we did Magic, we did Project, we did Coterie, we did it all, Intermezzo. I mean, it was where probably 50% of our brands came from.
That was also pre-COVID.
And it was pre-social media, too.
Everything's changed
And
now.
now I think that kind of level of emerging designer we're finding on social media and not so much at the trade shows.
Same here. We used to do a lot more. We do still do those that are connected, like SIF at Copenhagen Fashion Week, where there's sort of an alignment and you can do both, right? So you're there for Copenhagen Fashion Week, it's a stop by. And what I find about some of the brands that are in those trade shows is that the ones that really stand out also have dual representation. You're also seeing them somewhere else.
We do couture for fine jewelry in Vegas. That's right. Yeah.
And swim as well.
Yeah.
So it sounds like swim and fine jewelry is still a pretty active trade
Salone
show
and Milan
environment.
for home. So,
Right. Yes. It's a good one.
Yeah.
More questions?
Hi, Carolina Mello here. I'm the head of operations for Água de Coco, the swimwear line from Brazil, here in the US. Hi, Donata, how are you? I would love to hear you guys talk a little bit about what we are going on right now in 2023. We came from a boom after the pandemic, 2021, 2022, were years, at least here in the United States, we had more discretionary money flowing around, and now I feel like in 2023, we're back to competing for these dollars, and we are feeling more of a struggle. Do you have strategies that you put in place, like the digital stylists or new things that you guys thought business-wise to deal with the 2023 reality? Thank you.
I mean, one thing that we're doing that it's harder, admittedly harder for smaller brands, but alternative business models. So where there are opportunities to do drop ship, which are ways to test. So if you have inventory and there's a drop ship program, it's a way that we can take that inventory on and start to have the conversations with brands that maybe from a wholesale perspective we couldn't have. So we're starting to do more. And then with bigger brands, you get into whole session conversations and more hybrid models with inventory.
Same for Moda. We just launched a marketplace model this year, and it's been really successful in a way where, in a time where we don't have growing open-to-buys, but we either have existing businesses that we want to grow and may not have the open-to-buy to do so, or new brands that we want to test and pick up, and same thing. It's still very curated, so we're approaching it very much as if it were bought as wholesale, but it is another avenue for an opportunity. I think brands also have to really, what's happening right now is that there was a loss of the aspirational customer that kind of has fallen out of almost all luxury retailers' businesses. So it's that, she saves up for that one Gucci bag she's buying. I mean, the one who is striving to shop luxury, but maybe doesn't have the disposable income to be buying luxury day in and day out. That customer has gotten a lot harder to capture, and it's why, and so it's also driven many retailers to become incredibly promotional right now. So I think trying to also not worry about getting too much distribution, because you don't want your product saturated in the market right now. If your product is out there in a big way and you have slow sell-throughs, you will be included on all of this flurry of promotional activity that's happening right now, and that's obviously going to be very dilutive to your brand in the long run. But I also think stay super focused on your price positioning, because even at the highest end, and that's been a real challenge to sit in our seats, because obviously cost of goods and supply chain, all of that has gone up. So in designer businesses, each season over season, we're seeing prices rise, but we're not seeing, and there's some rare exceptions, maybe for the new Bottega bag, or a Row bag, she'll actually continue to it hasn't mattered that there's been an increase, and the same thing's happening with Chanel. But for everybody else and all other categories, the customer is just much more sensitive right now. So the more your brands can focus on their price positioning, now's a smart time to do that.
I also think that there's incremental revenue opportunities to do more pop-ups with consumers, with philanthropic opportunities, if there's not other points of distribution in key areas. I mean, I know your product well, and I admire your product. Like, I do think that there are ways to, if you are holding inventory, to get out and be more active in having selling opportunities, whether it's through specialty store, through a fan, through organizations. There's still a lot of very high-end designers doing events in people's homes. A lot of very high-end designers doing that. There's nothing wrong with setting up a great afternoon with a philanthropic opportunity. And 5 of them, 10 of them, it adds up and it helps.
Thank you, ladies.